It's working.
Girl, finally, I was about to have a conniption.
Do you have your microphone?
Yeah. Oh.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm Brittany.
I'm Brad.
And we are Virtual AudioShelf.
Before we start, make sure to click that red button down below to subscribe.
Okay, you know what I've been thinking? Why do we say subscribe before we start our videos? Because that one person was saying usually I don't subscribe when people tell me to subscribe before a video. But now I'm really thinking that makes sense. Why do we do that?
Yes, let's get rid of it.
Okay. It's gone.
So today we're going to be talking about YA, which is young adult, and how it has changed from generation to generation to generation. We're going to be talking about herstory.
Herstory! Yeah! Okay, so first up, we kind of need to talk about what the YA genre is and when it started and where it came from, because I was really surprised to find out that it started in the 60s.
That baffles me.
Yeah, that's
because
completely confusing.
Yeah, you would think that YA has been around for centuries, but in reality, it hasn't really started becoming popular until this decade, in the past decade.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I thought that it was much younger than the 60s. I thought it was birthed with the millennial generation, our generation of Gen Y, which I guess is that millennial mentality of thinking that everything comes along with us. But
that's true. And
I really thought that it was.
I also had no idea that millennial was the same thing as Gen Y.
No, you did not. So YA is, of course, young adult, and it has about as many subgenres as any adult genre has.
Yes.
It pertains mainly to the age that the protagonist is when the book begins. So that's why it's usually considered YA, because it has teenage and young adult, early 20s characters in it. It also is a genre that is supposed to soften the blow going from children to adult. So it's supposed to be that little awkward phase where you get acne and get your period and oops, there's surprises in the morning.
Girl, it's called life. It's called life. Figure it out. Experience it.
Yes. You don't need a subgenre for yourself.
Yes. I like how you mentioned that there are so many subgenres, because it kind of correlates with that idea of all the perplexities and the personalities of a child. And so it's like, oh, we got dystopian, we got fantasy, we got romance.
Contemporary.
Ooh,
we landed on contemporary at the same time.
We did. So let's talk about some of the old time YA books that were considered YA at the time.
Yeah.
So you said it started in the 60s, correct?
Yeah, 1967 with the publishing of The Outsiders.
Okay. So take The Outsiders, okay? Take them. And
group of boys.
Yes. So when I look at the cover of Outsiders, when I hear about the premise of The Outsiders, I think school.
Yes.
I think of morals and essays and do me a research paper on this project, and by Monday, 10 o'clock. I don't know. So that's what I'm saying, is I think of classic literature.
I think of not wanting to read.
Yes. I don't think of YA as it is now.
Yeah, exactly. The Outsiders is something that... Did you read The Outsiders in the 8th grade?
No. I spark noted it.
Yes. We were assigned it in the 8th grade, and I didn't want to read it. It was boring. It was stuffy. It was a group of 16-year-old boys who were roughing it in the streets with their leather jackets. And I was just no.
Save it for Grease.
Yeah. I watched that and I like it a lot more because it's got song and dance.
Yes. And John Travolta's high-pitched voice.
Dude, John Travolta in the 70s, though.
He could have got it.
All day.
He could have got it.
But anyway, there's some other books, though, that I was surprised to see on the list of YA old-timer.
Correct.
Generation X Young YA.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. But one of the big ones, I don't know what is on your list, but what about A Wrinkle in Time by the house of Madeleine Lagrange Estrange? I'm just kidding.
By the house.
It's actually Madeleine, what is it, Lagrange or something? Lagrange?
I don't know.
Lagangle?
You know, I don't learn how to pronounce any of those Generation X people.
Yeah, if the girl I can't pronounce her name, I'm not going to read her book.
She's French, right?
I know. I can't speak French.
No, I know. Exactly. We are your classic American.
I have actually read A Wrinkle in Time, to be honest.
Really?
Yes.
I wanted to read it when the movie came out, but then I heard the movie is trash, but the book is good, and so I still didn't read the book.
I heard the old time movie was crap. I have not seen the Oprah one yet.
I heard that the new one is not that good.
So maybe this is a book that literally cannot be made into a movie.
Probably because it sounds like it has so much futuristic stuff that it just would not be able to happen.
Yes. But again, when I was reading it, I was doing the audiobook for it, and I was like, this is schoolwork. This is not exciting, and that's just not my mind frame, you know?
One that surprised me was Catcher in the Rye.
What did you just say?
Catcher in the Rye.
That is a classic.
I know, but it's YA.
That is not a YA.
It is, because the protagonist is like a little teenage boy.
Oh my God. I just thought it was like something that taught me not to sleep with hookers.
Basically, it was. It was a how to not F up your life.
Yes. What about Island? What is that book called? Island of the Blue Dolphins.
Is that the one with Leonardo DiCaprio?
I don't know. But it's written by Scott Odell in the 1960s.
In the 1960s?
Welcome to the 60s.
It's just 160. Just one.
But I didn't think of I guess looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, Island of the Blue Dolphin. That sounds like a romance, and it's like not a fantasy, but it's like an escape, and they're on the island.
Yeah, and so that's a common thing with young adult as well, is that it teaches us lessons. So you learning not to be a hooker from The Catcher in the Rye is actually falls into the YA genre. But I want to know, how come are we still learning things when we're adults? Is the adult genre teaching us things? Because if so, there's a blurry line between YA and adult.
It teaches me not to sleep with my neighbors.
Yeah.
It teaches me not to kill people. It teaches me to accept my dysfunctional family as is.
How not to kidnap a baby and make it yours and pretend that it is yours for months and months and months until someone discovers that your baby actually died. How about that?
Yep. I learned that one too.
Yep.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like, I feel like people are not learning in adulthood. And I think that's a mistake, because maybe that's why we have wars.
Our society is bred to fight. We are not bred for peace.
That's true. I mean, look at us. We're in quarantine, eating out of cans.
Just doing things that people do.
I'm just saying. So what are some other classics that we are confused about why they're considered YA in the 60s?
Oh, The Catcher in the Rye was the only one that I got.
All right. I have The Black Pearl, again by Scott Odell, and The Loner by Esther Weir.
What?
Yes. These are all books that were considered YA
I never heard of
in the 60s. I've never heard of them, but when I look at them, I'm like, that looks boring.
It really does. It sounds boring. Because then we have like the today YA, which is The Fault in Our Stars.
Oh my gosh,
where
yes.
there's cancer and there's death and there's learning to love, even though your love may not last for eternity. And then you have Divergent. And The Hate You Give.
Oh, yes.
And I'm just reading off the list right now.
And even ones that we really love, The Heart So Fierce and Broken and Winterwood. Like all of these different types of YA genres that I considered, I'm like, now that is an escape.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And it doesn't have to be fantasy, because obviously we have like these newer age things, like Speak is YA, and that deals with rape and figuring out yourself and how to continue living when you've been so physically hurt. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why a book like Speak speaks to me more than The Outsiders or The
Mm.
Catcher in the Rye. And is it just the language that is used? Is it the setting? Because in The Catcher in the Rye, they didn't go to school. He didn't go to school. He decided to just like abandon his responsibilities and just like run off and partially use bad language and kind of see a boob. Like you know what I
Poor
mean?
guy.
Like for us as young adult, when we were at the age that we would be reading things like Catcher in the Rye or Speak, we were in high school. And so we were going to school. We were doing our responsibilities. We had a lot of responsibilities for people of that age. And so it feels like, depending on where you're at in life, if you're somebody who doesn't go to school and you don't like school, maybe The Catcher in the Rye will speak to you more.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're someone who does, and you're just trying to be a teenager in high school and not be bullied or taken advantage of, Speak speaks to you more.
Let me ask you something. Do you think this generation of YA covers hot button topics as much as the old generations?
Well, yeah, because we have things like The Hate You Give.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have like all of Bridget Kemmerer's work with the YA contemporary. So like it does tackle it, but I feel like it might tackle it in a different sort of way.
My opinion is that it tackles it in a societal viewpoint.
So not just from the individual?
Because back then it was like you were learning lessons about yourself and who you are and identity. And I think we still have that now, but we also learn about how society affects our identity.
Yes. Now that you're like saying that and explaining it, yeah, the bigger books, I'm sure that there are still YA fiction, fantasy, all of that coming out that deals with the individual. But the ones that get the movies and get the talk show spotlight hosts and get the Reese Witherspoon book club stamp of approval are the societal ones. Whereas The Catcher in the Rye and The Outsiders, they didn't have those things, and they all dealt from the personal aspect.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
And it's funny because like I think there's a mix. I didn't read it yet because it's on my TBR. And I was going to tell you this. I cannot believe I didn't tell you this, but I watched the movie with Bette Midler, Freak Show. It is on Hulu. It is amazing.
Really?
It's so good. However, Bette Midler plays a bitch.
I mean, that's her final form.
But I still love it.
Oh my God, I need to watch that. It's on Hulu?
So yes, and it's for free if you have Hulu.
Yes,
me and my mother watched it. It was so good. And basically, if you don't know what it is, it's about a young boy who dresses as a female, but it's never distinctly stated that he's trans or a drag queen. I think he's gender fluid. So he goes to this prep school because his mother, essentially, he's living with his mother, and that doesn't work out. So he goes and lives with his father starts attending a prep school. And in the prep school, people don't really accept him for being who he is. He dresses like a woman. He dresses like a fairy at one point. And it's like, just this kid would be fun to hang out with nowadays in our own, for me in a school or whatever. But the people in prep school didn't accept him. And so I can see how that book was all about like, finding out who you are, accepting and loving yourself. But it also showed that society will hate you for it.
Yeah.
And how to deal with society. Like this kid just went head first in saying, I'm going to wear a crown to school and no one's going to stop me. Yeah. I'm going to run for prom queen. No one's going to stop me.
Yeah.
So I really still think it always comes back to society nowadays. Whereas The Outsiders and, even A Wrinkle in Time with her own kind of journey to kind of grieve with her father missing and to find out that she herself can save the world. All those things are all internal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I never thought of it like that.
But that makes me think, it's like, what is happening to our generations where we have to, what made that switch?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What transitioned us away from trying to figure out who we are as a person to who we are as a society? And is it because the layers of our society have just been like pulled back over time, and that's where we find ourselves wanting to explore and wanting to explain?
I also think our society now is so defragmented.
Ooh, that's a
It's
good word.
broken up. And we have now literature and YA fantasy and YA romance and contemporary, all these new YA subgenres to help put it back together. To say, like, you know what, we're all one. We all are going through the same thing. However, we do go through different experiences, but we have to accept each other, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it started, like, you know, in the 90s doing that, even with Harry Potter, even though we're trying to figure out, like, Harry Potter individual, and he's trying to, like, come to terms with himself in that way. It still was a muggle versus wizard and witch kind of dialogue that was opened up in there. It's very, very interesting, and not something that I think I would have seen if we weren't doing a discussion on it.
I agree. And now we're getting into these different novels that are inclusive and hearing about other people's perspectives through their own voices and their own eyes, which I think is going to add another layer.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot.
It's very crazy how this genre, specifically YA, has changed over time. Whereas, could we say the same thing for adult fiction?
I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't even know what adult fiction is. It's a lot to take in.
Yes, I agree. And I want more adult fiction to teach us stuff.
Yeah.
I kind of want that.
Yeah.
Because maybe that's why our kids are so damn bad these days.
Hey, you said it.
Parenting is hard because I don't know why. I don't know what happened to these damn kids.
I don't know. I'm happy with a dog.
So now, for the last question of this discussion, what books do you think that are coming out now should be considered classics and taught in school in the future?
Ooh, that is a good ass question, dude. Wow. Simon.
Love a Simon. Okay.
Definitely Simon. Like, that one just like popped up.
I think you already mentioned one.
Oh yeah, The Hate You Give. Yeah, that one's definitely.
Yeah. Man, I'm trying to think of some. And it's funny because it's usually contemporaries that are discussed in school.
Oh yeah, because you can't have, like, that's the thing, is that fantasy gets too muddled in what the final message is. We listen and read fantasy because it's entertaining and it's exciting and it will keep us keep our adrenaline pumping and our hearts going. But like, if we are listening to Simon, we're flowing through the life of this person and we're experiencing this. It's not really whatever Divergent teaches us.
Yeah.
Which could also be the same thing as Simon, of like, we are all the same, we are all people, but society doesn't want us to appear the same.
And I also think they are scared about what fantasy would do for young people. Because like, women in STEM right now, that's a rarity, and we applaud it every time we see it because it's so rare. But I wonder if A Wrinkle in Time, that impact that book had on women in STEM, I wonder if that could be similar to the impact that, let's say, Lillian Clark's Half-Life would have.
Yeah.
With, clones and female empowerment and taking over the world one clone at a time, Yeah,
exactly. Or even something like, if they were to teach Hunger Games, not saying that Hunger Games is like the pinnacle of literature to be taught in schools, but like something similar. It's
you can pick and choose in Hunger Games. You got trauma, you got self-sacrifice, you got family, survival. But I wonder, I wonder why fantasy is not chose a lot in the educational system.
It's very, I'm very interested in that question.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's a teacher thing or if they have to get approval or like
Mm-hmm.
what the process is. Because, I mean, the difference between fantasy and contemporary is miles and miles, but they have similar lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it might get kids into reading more because some kids don't like contemporary as much as fantasy.
I agree. I growing up, I did not like it.
I don't like it now.
I got my own stuff to deal with, bitch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good question. I would be interested to know. I want to hear from some of the teachers. I know that currently we are all in like a quarantine kind of state, but a lot of teachers are still educating their students via Zoom and Google Meet and stuff like that. So let us know in the comments below if you're a teacher and what you are teaching your students, what books you are giving them to read, what the curriculum is looking like, and also just in general, if you read any of these books or if you maybe skewed away from what school was teaching you and you read something different when you were in school, let us know what YA books you are picking up and reading. You can follow along with us on our various social medias as well. We are on Twitter at AudioShelfMe, Instagram at AudioShelfMe, and Facebook at AudioShelf.
So until next time.
Well, you have to do the subscribe now because we didn't do it at the beginning.
Okay. So before you end, though, make sure to subscribe to our channel if you liked our material. We can provide more and more and more.
Yes, we purposely took the subscribe out of the beginning because we knew that we wanted you to watch.
So until next time, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Stay home. Wash your hands.